Hello everybody, this is AK. I'm back. So I've produced quite a few videos on China recently, and some people don't like the videos, and they said I was bashing China, and I was just reading news from Western media conspiring to discredit China. Uh, I don't think I was bashing China. I was just being factual, and China is having serious problems, right? Especially with its property sector. That's 25% of the economy, right? But at the same time, I do not think that China is crashing. I mean, people ask this all the time: is China's economy crashing? Is the country going the way of the dodo? I don't think so, right? Personally, I'm still invested in China through some of the companies that I own their stocks, like and in fact, I have an investment in a REIT, right? Capital Land China Trust. People who have been following my blog for a long time would know that, and that Capital Land China Trust has 100% exposure to China, right? And it's one of my larger investments. So if I think that China is crashing and is going the way of the dodo, I'll be rushing for the exit and selling those stocks in that REIT, right? But I'm not doing that. Still, we mustn't be like an ostrich and bury our heads in the sand, thinking that the problems they don't exist because we don't see them in Singapore. The problems are real, and I say, should we be worried? I mean, of course, if we're invested in China one way or another, we should be worried, right? But it depends on how much exposure we have, and therefore how worried we should be. If we are 100% exposed to China, it means our portfolio is 100% in maybe, I don't know, a handful of Chinese stocks, then perhaps we should be more worried than other people, so like 100% Alibaba and that kind of thing, right? Especially if they don't pay a dividend, and you're not being paid to wait for things to improve. I mean, those people would have to be more worried than the rest of us. Of course, we also worry about whether there'll be more losses to come. There are viewers and readers who wrote to me and said that they are nursing huge paper losses on Chinese stocks, and they can't seem to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Stock price bounces up a bit and then it goes back down again, and it just seems to be stuck at the, they're just stuck, right? So like I said in the previous video, I'll just ask the question, if I were in their shoes, if the fundamentals are still good. If the fundamentals are still good, and then selling at this point could be selling at the bottom. And that is always a very regretful thing, to sell at the bottom, because after you sell, you see the price going up higher and higher in future, right? I mean, that could be the case. So I don't know. I don't invest in these stocks. So those who are invested in the stocks, they should know why they invested in these businesses in the first place, and revisit those reasons and see whether the reasons are still valid. I mean, the stock price could go lower, which means there'll be more losses to come. But the stock price could also go higher, which means that the losses could narrow, or at some point the position turns profitable. Right? Always look at the fundamentals, go back to valuations, and see whether it still makes sense to stay invested, or to in fact pump more money, or maybe if we should have to trim our position. And for people who get very emotionally affected, mentally affected by paper losses, I mean, it's just losses on paper, but some people can't take it, and frankly speaking, these people are poor candidates for to be investors, right, in equities. I think they'll be much better off staying invested in fixed income, for example, because there's no price risk if held to maturity. If some people just don't have the stomach for volatility, Okay, and that's the honest truth. I mean, this might offend some people, but it's the honest truth, right? And they shouldn't be invested in the stock market. Okay, and if you see the news recently, right? I mean, this is by the International Monetary Fund that says China's real estate woes require a forceful response by the country, and that the government has to help restructure struggling property developers to make sure there isn't any increase in financial instability, to make sure it remains localized in the real estate market and doesn't spread out into the broader financial system, and help restore confidence of households. Now, in that statement itself, there are many things to unpack. Right, it says you have to help restructure struggling property developers, which means you just simply lending more money to the property developers isn't the solution. You have to restructure the property developers, right, and make sure there isn't any increase in financial instability. So when people say restructure, I get the impression that there will have to be some kind of forgiving of debt, right? And in fact, when we see the next bit of the news that says Chinese developer Country Garden Holdings has already warned that it will have its first ever default and has hired advisors, which is a strong indication that the company is headed for restructuring that will be one of the nation's biggest, which means it cannot pay its bondholders, it cannot pay its lenders. This has to be restructured, which means the people, the institutions that lend money to the company must expect a huge haircut, right? A lot of that debt would have to be written off, and the lenders will have to suffer. This is a fact. So this problem is not going to go away in a hurry, right? And the statement from IMF is really telling, because it also says that we have to restore consumer confidence, the confidence of the homeowners, because this wealth effect in China has weakened tremendously. Because of the issues that the property sector is facing, right? That and the Chinese government has to step up its efforts. So in the news, we also see a report about food delivery service in China, and that they are struggling, right? Because China's economic growth is flagging and competition in the business is heating up. So the pie is not growing that quickly, but there's a lot more competition now, right, for a smaller pie. And their struggles are symptomatic of China's lackluster consumption growth. We're talking about food delivery platforms here. Food delivery, even that is struggling, right? And their struggles are symptomatic of China's lackluster consumption growth, with subdued spending and travel figures from the Golden Week holiday, suggesting that the economy may remain in the doldrums for a while. So this is a recent data that was released, and that's the Golden Week holiday, right? So, like I always say, don't be overly optimistic, right? And don't be overly pessimistic, and we should stay pragmatic. That means, right, not to be 100% exposed to China, and by the same time, don't have to think that China is going the way of the dodo, right? And be pragmatic, go back and look at the fundamentals, go back to valuations, and see whether it makes sense to stay invested in whatever we're invested in, and whether it makes sense to add, or maybe we should trim. Okay, so that's AK reading the news. If AK can read the news, so can you. Bye bye.